Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Real quick before we jump into today's video, I just wanted to thank everyone that's recently subscribed for getting us over that 200 sub count milestone. I know it's not really much right now, but I really appreciate the support and faith you guys are putting in me. Alright, that's enough of that mushy stuff. Let's get into today's video. So I was on Tubi the other day, scrolling as one does, when I saw that they had the original 1969 run of Scooby Doo, Where Are You? Available for streaming. Shout out to Tubi, by the way. They seem to be the collection pan for anything and everything that the main streaming services don't think is important enough to host on their servers, and that's given them quite an interesting list of stuff to watch. They've got the original Looney Tunes, Dexter's Lab, The Twilight Zone, and Ed, Edd n Eddy, among other shows, along with a bunch of classic movies that you'll remember watching once you see the titles. But anyway, back to Scooby Doo. I had fond memories of watching this show on Saturday mornings. Anybody else remember Saturday morning cartoons? And I thought, what the hell? Let's see how it aged. Well, I'm here to tell you, it is every bit the banger show I remember it being. And I can't wait to show it to my daughter when she eventually gets here. Now, the first season of this show, and we are only talking about the first season, mind you, that being the original 17-episode run, is really kind of an interesting beast. They dropped us right into the middle of the action, where Mystery Inc. is already established, the cast have already been fully fleshed out, and the battle lines have been drawn. These teenage yahoos know what they're about. They're here to unmask villains and chew bubblegum.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
These days, were Scooby Doo to appear on television, probably on the CW network if I had to guess, it would have painfully explored the backstory of every character. The first episode would have been about the team all meeting for the first time, and the remainder of the season would have been about their interpersonal dramas as they chase down a serial killer or some shit. Some real Surf Dracula, late season Riverdale vibes going on here. Not so in the 60s. We don't need backstory or continuity, we're here for the ride. And boy does this show deliver. From the opening scene of episode 1, you're confronted with these truths. Yes, these are kids. Yes, they have a god-awful van they tool around in. And yes, there's a talking dog. We're in season 4 of this joint. Figure it out.
Figure it out.
You've got to love the commitment to the bit, and the trust that Hanna-Barbera put in the audience to stick around. Once we look beyond the cast, however, we see the true insanity of Scooby Doo, Where Are You? That being the town of Coolsville itself. What a hole.
Wow. What a hole.
I am positive that if Batman had heard of Coolsville before settling in Gotham, the Dark Knight would have set up a Batcave outside of town so fast it'd make your head spin. In the first 3 episodes alone, we've got an art thief, a yacht theft ring, and a jewel thief, all of whom could have been chasing scores well into the millions of dollars. For whatever reason, all the world's lowlifes and criminals have all descended on Coolsville to test the mettle of those meddling kids. But what's funny is that the town's goon economy is actually pretty strapped, with only 1 or 2 of the villains working with toadies and or henchmen. Add to that the fact that Coolsville has to have some kind of record for long, lonely roads, abandoned buildings, and actual castles of all things. And it's hardly surprising that we've got the perfect recipe for some serious criminal shenanigans. Oh. One of the things I love about this show is how we know almost nothing about the Mystery Inc. crew beyond the context clues we're given. To start with, all we know is that they're in high school, probably AP classes since they're always hanging around Coolsville U, which, talk about an Ivy League school, am I right? Fred's basically the leader, Daphne's the pretty one, Velma's the nerd, and Shaggy's the burnout. Or is he? I submit to you the following possibility. What if, just what if, Norval Rogers weren't the burnout stoner we have all come to know and love him as? What if it's Shaggy and not Fred, or Velma, or even Scooby Doo that's the main character? First, let's make one thing clear. Shaggy smokes pot. Probably a lot of it. I don't care what the creators, or the voice actors, or even the officially licensed bios say. When you put jokes like this in your show,
I said we're lost in a fog.
You buzzed?
that character is smoking weed. Moving on. Now the question becomes, Why does he smoke weed? To find the answer, let's go back to those context clues I talked about earlier. In the first episode, we find that Shaggy is
The swingingest gymnast in school.
So right off the bat, we find out that far from being a loser, Shaggy is an athlete just like Fred. Later on in the season, we find out that he runs track as well. Now, I don't know what it was like in the 60s, but when I was in school, if you wanted to compete in athletics, you had to maintain a certain level of GPA. So we've got commitment to schoolwork as well. Add on the hobbies of ventriloquism and being a master diver and solving mysteries at all hours of the day, and suddenly there's a lot of stuff on Shaggy's plate. What if he smokes the devil's lettuce just to calm down and chill? Think about it. With how much of an overachiever Shaggy is, I'd say it's safe to imagine that his parents are putting a lot of pressure on him to maintain this level. What if it gets to be too much for him at times? Can you really begrudge the guy a spliff and a sandwich given the life he has to lead? Next up, we've got Velma freaking Dinkley. Even setting aside that truly awful Mindy Kaling show, apparently Velma has always been fairly insufferable and I just didn't know it. When I was a kid, she was always the one with the knowledge, able to puzzle stuff out that went over the others' heads, and generally making sure that everyone knew that there were no real ghosts. These days, good lord. This version of Velma is the one that took advanced classes in 7th and 8th grade and just made it her whole personality. Then everyone caught up to her and she got desperate to prove she's still at the top of the academic pile. She dumps little quips like this.
It's very simple. When the barometric pressure dropped and the warm offshore air came in contact with an inland cold front, we ran into some unnavigable nubulation.
To rhetorical questions and talks down everyone like it's her side hustle. Given just how useless she actually is when her glasses fly off her face, she really doesn't seem to get that the team don't actually need her, seeing as how they tend to just brute force their way through shit anyway. After Velma, we've got Fred, who I personally think is the owner of Mystery Inc., given just how hard he digs for another mystery to solve. This kid is the 60s equivalent of those door-to-door window washers that just will not stop trying to deliver their sales pitch. Perfect example. The gang are out on the beach gathering clams for a clam bake when the lights at the old derelict boardwalk amusement park, frickin' Coolsville, right, kick on. And the whole place looks like it started running again. It is none of their business. They have no right to trespass on this property, they have no indication of the construction schedule, and they have no information other than the lights came on. Then Fred hits the gang with this.
Well, this calls for a little investigation.
How about no, Fred? How about you take your neckerchief wearing ass, get your clams, get the gang, get in your van, and just leave? And what's more is that he's the inciting actor in pretty much every episode. He's the one who says, hey, who cares about our health, safety, and lives? Let's go check out this abandoned mine for the ghost that might be lurking inside. He makes this ragtag bunch of idiots into a walking insurance lawsuit who never get their comeuppance because, unfortunately, he's always right. And finally, we've got Daphne Blake, the ingenue. Unfortunately, aside from being Fred's main squeeze, we aren't really given a lot of backstory on her besides the fact that her parents are connected to the film industry. Well, that and the fact that out of everyone on the Mystery Inc. team, she got voted most likely to get struggle snuggled. I'm not kidding either. In episode 10, Daphne has an off-screen costume change under the hypnosis of a creepy clown. I can't prove anything, but really it's just
the implication.
At long last, what video on Scooby Doo would be complete without at least mentioning his rogues gallery? Now, the villains in Season 1 are, in my opinion, the strongest in the entire IP's history. Straight up, my hackles still get raised if I ever hear this sound. And, with few exceptions, every episode manages to hit those same terrifying notes. In fact, I would argue that the reason this first season stands the test of time is because of the villains it brings into play. The Green Ghost, the Space Kook, the Ghost Clown, the Puppet Master. All iconic villains that really pushed the gang to their breaking point. At least as far as the 1960s censors would let them go. And these guys commit to their bits. Just look at the Black Knight from the first episode. This hunchbacked 4'0" asthmatic assistant curator literally decides that his best course of action is to seal himself into a suit of armor and stalk the gang around a museum. Not only that, but his perfect hiding spot for the man he abducted is to stick him out on the main floor for days to let him soil himself and slowly die of dehydration. And he almost gets away with it, what's more. Maybe it isn't such a shock that Coolsville is such a hive of scum and villainy if their cops can't even find
Professor High White!
Or look at Dr. Najib and all his 1960s vaguely racist glory. This moron decides that, instead of just calling Shaggy out for accidentally pocketing a priceless Egyptian artifact and re-stealing it when no one is looking, he's gonna wrap himself up in toilet paper and chase the kids around the university. And, on top of that, he's gonna create perfect replicas of the gang using his apparently prolific mold-making skills just to scare them some more. Like, a lot of these Season 1 villains could be making just as much money, if not more, with the talents they clearly already have. Mr. Wickles could have sold his own paintings instead of forging others. Stuart Weatherby could have just gone into film work with his makeup techniques. Mr. Jenkins created better robotics technology than we have here in 2026, and Henry Bascom could have revolutionized the special effects industry. But no. Instead, they decide to commit their talents to a life of crime, only to get outsmarted by a dog and
These blasted kids.
Rewatching the first season of Scooby Doo was the most fun I've had watching television in a long time. Not only is it just a fun ride that holds up even 57 years later, but it's interesting to see where the Scooby Doo IP came from. These days, I look at the modern offerings and just shake my head. It's like I realized that Scooby was always a kid's show, but they really lean into it now. Kind of like how Star Wars devolved from an intricate space opera for all ages to a vehicle to sell kids new overpriced Lego kits and Magic the Gathering cards. Which, I know there hasn't been a crossover yet because Disney has Lorcana, but if things get bad enough, just you watch. It's gonna happen. I don't know, there's just something about the animation in this series, the music, the villains, that all speaks to a slightly older target demographic than the one that they've been recording since its release in 1969. I'll probably end up watching the other seasons since, as I said, it is a kid's show and I've got one on the way. But for right now, I'm perfectly happy pretending that Season 1 of Scooby-Doo Where Are You is the only one going. Aside from the 2002 live-action movie, of course. Matthew Lillard deserved an Oscar for that performance, and I'm tired of pretending that he didn't. Anyway, that's all I've got for you this time, so if you could do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe buttons, I'd really appreciate it. Every little bit really helps me out. Also, head down to the comments and let me know if there's anything you guys would like to see me cover in the future. And, while you're at it, go ahead and take a look at the other videos on my channel, or hit up my website to see my blog and maybe check out one of my books on Amazon. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.